What's going on, everybody? I'm Johnny Lee. Today I want to talk about something that has made a lot of Christians furious the last time I brought this up. The idea that Jesus was the ancient version of Jim Jones. Now, before you start typing in all caps, let me be clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that Jesus and Jim Jones were identical in every single detail. I am saying this. When you look at the pattern of how destructive cult leaders operate, the way they demand loyalty, control behavior, and prey on the oppressed, the Jesus you meet in the Gospels looks a lot closer to a Jim Jones style figure than most Christians want to admit. And that matters because this mindset is still destroying lives today. So let's go to point number one. Why I even talk about this. I didn't grow up hating Christianity. I grew up inside it. Son of a preacher, 20 years locked into the faith. And the religion didn't bring my family together. It severed the relationship between me and my father. Christianity, it overrode basic father-son connection, put doctrine and obedience to God above emotional reality. And it left me as a kid feeling confused, guilty, and never good enough. I'm not walking around traumatized every day, but I used that childhood anger as fuel to finally ask, what exactly is this system I've been serving? And when I stepped back and I looked at the pattern, what I saw just wasn't a faith. I saw a control structure, the same kind that shows up over and over in history. Point number two, how cult leaders actually work. Now let's forget the holy language for a minute and just look at the mechanics. Destructive religious leaders, whether it's Jim Jones, David Koresh, or anybody else, they usually follow the same recipe. They claim a special connection to the divine, demand total loyalty even over your family. They prey on the poor, lonely, and desperate. Use fear, hell, persecution, judgment, the quote-unquote end is near. Discourage thinking for yourself or listening to outside voices. Let me show you how simple this is. Imagine you put a group of kids in a room. You give them something simple to do. Then you tell them, there's an invisible person in the corner watching everything you do. No camera, no adult standing there, nobody physically monitoring them. But the second those kids believe there's an invisible watcher, their behavior changes. They get quieter. They follow the rules. They act like they're being monitored even when nobody's in the room. That's religion in one picture. Someone you can't see is always watching, so obey. Once that idea is planted, they don't need chains on your wrists. Your own mind becomes the prison guard. That's how cults work. And that's how a lot of mainstream religion works too. Let's describe in point 3 Jim Jones in a nutshell. You don't even need every detail of his life, just the outline. He grew up with a messed up childhood and a racist father. He blended socialism, communism, and Christianity into his message. He targeted the disenfranchised and minorities. A huge percentage of his followers in Jonestown were black. He preached imminent danger, that America was evil, that they had to escape. Told people to sell possessions, relocate, and submit completely to his leadership. And it ended with over 900 people dead in Jonestown, including hundreds of children after being forced and pressured into drinking poison. One quote that sums up his approach is basically, keep them poor and tired. If they're poor, they can't escape. If they're tired, they can't plan. That's not spirituality, that's strategy. It's how manipulators keep people trapped. Break down their resources, break down their will, make them dependent on you. Now, my fourth point, we're going to put Jesus under the same lens. Christians are very comfortable calling Jim Jones a false prophet, but they refuse to apply the same lens to their own Messiah. If we take the gospel portrait of Jesus at face value, as if he actually said those words, what do we see? He tells people they must hate father, mother, brother, sister, even their own life to be his disciple. He tells a young rich man to sell all he has, give to the poor, and follow him, and makes it clear that wealth is an obstacle. Peter said to him, "We've forsaken all and followed you." They literally abandoned homes and jobs for this movement. He starts policing not just actions, but thoughts. He said himself, if you look at a woman with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. And in another place he says, every idle word you speak will be judged. He preaches that the end is near, the kingdom is at hand, and judgment is coming. Now ask yourself honestly, if a man showed up today preaching that the world is about to end, telling people to leave their families, sell everything, police their thoughts, and dedicate their lives completely to him, would you call that healthy religion, or would you call that a cult? Because that's exactly what Jim Jones did, just in a modern context. He positioned himself as the only true leader, used fear of persecution and the government to isolate his people, took them away to a compound, and ultimately led them to death. The pattern is the same. One just has stained glass and Sunday music around it. Point number 5, why Christians get so mad at this comparison. The Christians will say, but Jesus actually is God. Jim Jones was a fraud. But notice something. They can't prove that. All they can do is point back to a collection of books written decades later, edited, translated, and weaponized, used to justify slavery, colonization, and all kinds of abuse in God's name. Meanwhile, the structure is identical. Total loyalty, sacrifice your life if necessary, your suffering is holy, questioning is rebellion. That's why I once called Christianity a death cult. Not because every Christian is out here drinking poison, but because the core message is, die to yourself, hate your life, be willing to suffer and even die for this leader and this God. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not self-sufficiency. That's surrendering your one mortal life to an invisible boss you've never seen or heard. Point number 6, what I'm actually asking you to do. I'm not asking you to join Johnny Lee's movement. I'm not asking you to follow me to some compound. I'm asking you to do the exact opposite of what abusers and cults want. You empty your cup of what you've been handed. Look honestly at the pattern of history. Ask yourself, if anyone else behaved like this, what would I call them? If a modern preacher demanded your family, your money, your thought life, your willingness to die for him, you'd call that dangerous. But when it's Jesus, you call it holy. I'm saying stop giving that pattern a pass just because the name at the top is familiar. Point number 7, the self-sufficiency takeaway. Here's where I land, ladies and gentlemen. Religion preys on the oppressed, the lonely, and the desperate. Men like Jesus as portrayed in the Gospels, Jim Jones and many others step into that hunger and say, "Follow me, hate your life, if necessary, die for this cause." And regular people, including children, end up paying the price. In the age of information, you do not have to fall for that. You can actually study where Christianity came from, see how often this pattern repeats in history, and decide to live your life on your terms, not as fuel for somebody else's cult, whether ancient or modern. If your God is real and powerful, he shouldn't need you screaming at me in the comments. He shouldn't need you defending him at all. Like I've said before, if they have to speak for God, they've already lost the debate. I thank you for listening. Remember, life is suffering. Death is mercy. No one is coming to save you. So think for yourself.